Morning and welcome to the next episode of our podcast,
where we drink tea and navigate the balance between school and personal life.
I'm Sophia Safe.
And I'm Sophia Curry.
And
this is Sip and Spill. Welcome back to the Tea Journal.
The topic we'll be touching on today is the definition and origin of stress spirals.
Okay, well, why don't we talk about what a stress spiral is first? Because that's like I don't want to say it's unheard of, but it's not definitely not a common phrase.
Agreed. So a stress spiral, often called an anxiety spiral or a mental spiral, is a self-perpetuating, escalating cycle of negative thoughts and emotions that become overwhelming and difficult to control. It is not a formal health diagnosis itself, but a pattern of thinking often linked to conditions like anxiety and depression.
I think stress spirals are something that we all go through. I think go ahead.
Like a very general definition of what
for sure.
Stress spiral is.
I also feel like stress spirals, like you said, because it's like a very general description, I feel like it's also kind of like it can be broad in terms of like it can look like different things.
Absolutely agreed. I mean, it can definitely manifest itself in both physical and mental ways, I think especially.
Oh, yeah. And I think physically, I tend to feel things more physically than sometimes I do head on like mentally, like, full on like crying and like having a mental breakdown. I think my body feels it first physically, and then usually there's like an event that happens that catalyzes like the emotional response to it. Absolutely. In terms of like the breakdown. Yeah, I don't know. Like that's how I feel. That's how it feels for me personally.
And then today we are also going to have our first, what's it called, brutal honesty.
Oh,
which we've actually talked about this segment in the past, what it might have become. But I think we finally decided to split up the Tea Journal, which used to be extremely long and in depth about our own personal thoughts. So we've decided to create a segment that's specific to our personal thoughts and diving a little deeper into the topic, so it's not as superficial as it might have been.
So like basically, like I know we always talked about like, oh, we're never going to use this segment. So we finally found it. So it's kind of our own personal stories. So instead of kind of giving you the gist of that in the Tea Journal, we'll try to do that more in brutal honesty and save it for that. So it's not an every episode thing.
No. I mean, some Tea Journals will still have a lot of our perspective, especially if we're not going to have a brutal honesty.
Yeah.
But for the episodes that we think that will really benefit from a deep insight into our personal perspectives, we're going to try to add that on.
Yeah. So it's going to be definitely one of the more common segments that you see. But anyway, moving into it. So we did the definition of kind of what a stress spiral is, but
do you want to go ahead and do the more specific definition?
Sure. So we have a definition of like stress or anxiety spiral, like more, I don't want to say clinically, but like definitely more technical. So a stress or anxiety spiral typically begins with a minor trigger, which activates a chain reaction involving both mental and physical symptoms that reinforce each other. Oof. I feel like that's kind of what I described in the beginning. Like there was like a catalyst.
But the fact that stress and anxiety isn't just a mental thing is something that I feel like a lot of people already understand.
And I think it's something that also a lot of other people need to hear.
Interesting. Why do you say that?
Because although I feel like the stigma around mental health has drastically decreased from where it's been from, often what I say, and I think I said, like, the reason why it's harder for people to kind of accept a mental illness or, like, mental diagnosis is because it's not physical. Like, you can't see it.
Yeah.
Like, although you, like, can't see cancer, you can get an x-ray, and then a doctor can say, there it is, and point it out to you. And depression and anxiety and those types of things, it's kind of harder to do that. Like, you can get brain scans and then they can kind of show you and demonstrate the activity.
And now, because of how much research there's been around that, we can see that there is a physical manifestation of depression, PTSD, bipolar disorder.
And I think that's really important because it makes it all the more real to people rather than being able to discount it and say it's just in your head and you're making it up because there's nothing you can physically see. But now, because again, like you said, the growth in technology and just the ability for it to manifest in physical symptoms and the fact that we know more about that now, allows people to attribute it to something now and can recognize it and say, oh yeah, maybe there is some validity to this because, you know what, I've been feeling like that, or I've experienced physical symptoms like that too.
Absolutely, yes.
So it makes it more of like a health diagnosis than like, oh, it's all in your head.
For sure.
So yeah.
So moving on into the mental side of a stress or anxiety spiral, the cycle involves repetitive negative thinking, which is also called rumination, and catastrophizing, where a person jumps to worst case scenario. This makes it hard to focus, think rationally, or shift attention away from the worries.
I think we all feel like this.
Mm-hmm.
I want to talk about kind of like what sends people into a stress spiral that kind of creates like this.
Mm-hmm.
Because I feel like any stressful situation, either people have different thresholds, is what I want to say.
Yes, agreed.
So like,
stress.
Yeah. So like some people a test might, and then for other people like a test is like fine.
Absolutely. I feel like it also depends on your past experiences with something.
Oh yeah. And then we can also talk about like unlike normal worry, which is usually proportionate to the situation and resolves once the issue is addressed. A spiral gains momentum, feels disproportionate to the actual trigger, and can feel impossible to stop without intervention.
Especially when it comes to, I feel like, the fight response that comes with the physical symptoms or the release of stress hormones like cortisol and adrenaline.
Yes.
These all lead to physical symptoms such as a racing heart, shallow breath, muscle tension, and digestive distress, which can then fuel more anxious thoughts, creating a feedback loop.
Yeah.
I feel like I can relate a lot to the what's it called? Digestive distress. Because I feel like when I'm stressed about something, I feel like I'm gonna throw up right then and there.
Yeah. I think I can kind of relate to that. But I more relate to kind of like the racing heart and muscle tension.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like when I'm taking a test and I'm like really stressed about the test, like I'm very tense and like my hand will hurt while I write because then like my muscles are already tense. I can feel my heart racing. Like I don't think I start sweating, but I definitely get like antsy. I shake. I've shook before. Like my hand. Oh,
never
From
mind.
me?
Yes. No.
Oh.
No, I haven't. No, I haven't.
Okay. Anyway. Yeah, but no, I definitely like I tend like my hand starts to get a little shaky, or just like even maybe like just like kind of like my body as a whole gets shaky. But yeah, for sure. And then like there's like it just continues, and that's I think kind of like where people start experiencing panic attacks.
Yes, I feel like panic attacks go a lot into stress spirals. Where stress, like a panic attack, is a symptom of a stress spiral. I feel like one of the larger symptoms, I'd say.
For sure. So we can move into the origin or the concept of a spiral in a psychological context. Okay, so basically it describes a dynamic process where a pattern of behavior or emotion feeds back into itself, either upward, which is positive, or downward, which would be negative.
So the idea of the downward spiral is rooted in clinical evidence and neuroscientific research, particularly concerning stress and mood disorders. We can start off by talking about neuroplasticity. And so neuroplasticity is essentially the fact that research in affective neuroscience is suggesting that the brain is malleable and can change in response to repeated experience. So that's just neuroplasticity.
Yeah, like there's like a whole, I think it's really important to stress. There's like a whole mouthful of like really fancy words that me and Sophia are throwing out here. Again, we will always be noting our resources.
Absolutely.
In the caption. Or in the description, caption, whatever it would be. Caption. But yes, so that was just a mouthful in and of itself. And I think neuroplasticity is something more people should know about too.
Agreed.
Because this can also help remedy your stress spirals and how you view things. And we talked a lot about this in psych class and how we can kind of rework our brain into literally physically responding to a situation, and almost, I don't want to say trick our minds into like believing something, but almost like shifting our perspective and our mindset so that it's easier to do something.
Thinking about it in a new way.
Yeah. Oh my goodness gracious. So did you just quote Wicked? The both of us, not together, but we just watched the new Wicked for Good, and every time Alphaba and what's his name, Firo, kept saying it's just looking at it in a new way. But like that's important, actually.
I feel like in the way that they used it was extremely interesting.
Oh, it was so stupid.
But I feel like the concept of that phrase, thinking about things in a new way, is an extremely important thing that people can talk about.
Yeah. And so to go back to that neuroplasticity, you know, it says it can lower the threshold for stress response. And so if you kind of like look at things in a way and you choose it, you recognize the signs. If you start to push yourself to rework, you know, your response to something,
which that creates a higher threshold for a stress response.
There you go. Yes, it creates a higher threshold. That's what I was going to say. It creates a higher threshold for a stress response. You're less likely to get stressed in those situations because you're physically, like literally, reworking your brain to say, I'm not going to let this affect me as much. So as stupid as it sounds to like talk to yourself in your mind and kind of do those breathing exercises, calm yourself down and say like, this is going to be okay. And even tell yourself like, you know, I know what I know. I'm going to perform well in this test. And once it's over, I'm going to move past it. Or once I'm past this performance or what game or whatever it is, you're physically like reworking your body. And I think that's something that's really cool because it just shows like really how powerful like just thinking can be.
And we're going to touch on this a lot more when we get to chamomile corner and how to fix what might be your low threshold. And speaking of low threshold, chronic stress can cause, like we said, neuroplastic changes in specifically the prefrontal cortex and amygdala, which is the part of your brain that affects, which is also the part that has your stress threshold. And so, like
specifically that amygdala.
Absolutely. So chronic stress is going to affect your threshold and lower it. And so this means that after repeated episodes of stress or negative emotions, an individual becomes more vulnerable to future relapses, and negative affective states can accrue into self-perpetrating downward emotional spirals.
And I think I kind of just want to like sit with that for a second and think about that, because we always think about like stress and stress is real and stress can send you, but like, and again, like I was saying, like we don't think about, hey, if I allow myself to have that much power over myself by talking like that negative way and like allowing myself to kind of have those future relapses and having those like negative emotions and not trying to do anything about that. And we know like that kind of pushes you to, again, accrue into self-perpetuating downward emotional spirals. It's funny to me that people don't think they can do the opposite with positive thinking. It's always like, how can things get worse? How am I always making things worse? And there's no way to make it better, and not like, well, maybe if you did the same thing, but the opposite, kind of like reverse psychology.
Absolutely.
Definitely, I think I just like, that's something I think people should sit with. I'm like, you're literally chemically, by talking like those negative thoughts, you're literally chemically rewiring your brain to like believe that and make yourself like physically feel worse.
And we talk about false memories, and it's like
literally today.
Yeah. And we were talking about how you telling yourself things or someone else even feeding you misinformation can change the chemistry of your brain, can change you to believe things that actually weren't true.
Yeah, it can change your memories. And I think even now, like looking at that and how our memories and past experiences affect our stress levels, just like if you're telling yourself a certain version of the story, like I'll give it, I can go more in depth in this in brutal honesty, but I'll give a little bit of an example now. Like when I first tried out for districts and I was telling myself like a specific thing and I was like, oh my God, I'm not going to be doing it. Like, look what happened the last several times I did it. And I'm like, it pushed me to not have as much motivation the next go around, because I told myself a story that like, this is why I didn't make it. And I'm terrible and this, that, and the other thing. So like, again, it really shows like I chemically like wired my brain to be like, nah, it's not worth it.
Yeah.
And it's sad to me. And telling myself like a certain story. So there are psychological models, and the use of the word downwards, or the phrase downward spiral, as a descriptive term for escalating negative thought patterns has been adopted in cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, and general mental health discussions to explain processes like rumination and catastrophic thinking. Wow, is literally what I just said.
Yeah, exactly. So psychologists use CBT to help people recognize when their internal thought processes are becoming unmanageable and potentially indicative of underlying issues like generalized anxiety disorder or depression. So stress spirals in themselves can be a symptom of some of these larger psychological difficulties.
And I think that's something that's important to know. Like, if like talking positively is not always just gonna like change it. Like, absolutely. I think that's only one part of the equation, especially if it's, you know, the stress spiral is as a result of a larger issue like depression or just like an anxiety disorder.
And like Sophia and I always say, we are not mental health professionals. You should not only come to us for issues, which I feel like no one is doing. But
but to put the disclaimer out there anyway, yes, we are not professionals in any capacity. If you need
professional help, please go and get the suicide prevention hotline. Number is 999?
998.
998.
Guys, I swear we're informed.
Nope, it's 988.
Is it actually?
It's 988.
I swear we're informed. I swear. Hold on, let's look it up really quick. Yes, but
it's 988.
Okay, 988. But yes, so definitely don't just rely on this or even anybody that you genuinely hear on the internet or anywhere talking about it. Use it as a resource and then go out and get your own information, do your own research. But essentially, the origin is a combination of a brain's biological stress response system and learned or ingrained negative thought patterns that reinforce each other over time.
Yep.
So this was a quick, fast tea journal, but
especially because we're not including many of our personal anecdotes here.
Yeah, that's true. So we're kicking that to brutal honesty. But
do you want to go ahead?
So I think the main takeaway would probably be stress spirals can come as a result of a larger issue, or they can just be something in and of itself. They can definitely look different for other people, but I think it also helps to note that there are physical symptoms that come from this, which makes it all the more real.
Absolutely. Just as though how there are physical symptoms for many other things like mental health disorders.
And I think it's really important to, think about that, and also think about I don't want to say easy ways, but the simpler ways that simpler than it seems to change this, behavior and this pattern in your brain.
Okay, so that pretty much wraps up our tea journal for this week.
Welcome back to Chamomile Corner.
To recap, Chamomile Corner is where we'll go through skills to recenter yourself as well as strengthen your mental health.
For today, we will be discussing the process to deal with stress spirals.
All right. So, to begin, to deal with a stress spiral, you can use immediate coping mechanisms like deep breathing, changing your environment, or even a cold water facial to interrupt the physical and mental state. For long-term solutions, cultivate a mental practice, challenge negative thoughts by questioning their validity, and engage in activities that bring you joy or provide focused attention. And I feel like that was a very general idea of what we're going to go into.
Oh, definitely. But we can definitely start with those in the moment topics. So practicing mindfulness and breathing. Focus on the present moment through deep, slow breaths, which can calm your nervous system.
So this can be some things like the triangle method or the square method. You know a lot more about those breathing methods, so why don't you go ahead and touch on that? Box.
Yes,
that's
box, square method. It's like box method? I mean, honestly, yeah, you could probably do it. Like, I've seen so many things out there. Personally, I like the Calm app, in which it has a bunch of different breathing exercises on there. There's like re-energize, focus, calm, and like just a whole bunch of things in there. But if you look up like breathing patterns, one of the ones that Sophia had mentioned, box breathing or square, as she so fondly calls them, is you'll kind of watch a dot or some object move along a square, and it'll have you breathe in and then hold and then breathe out and then hold and then repeat it again. She's already trying it.
Hey.
But basically, It's like you breathe in for 4 seconds, you hold for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 4 seconds, and you hold for 4 seconds. And you can, of course, change the intervals, but it's usually the 4-4-4-4 method.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's a bunch of different ones out there. And I've also seen ones where you trace your hand. So it's like you breathe in as you go up the finger and then breathe out. And then the little divots are kind of like a hold, and then you breathe in and breathe out. So that's a really good one when you don't want to sit there counting 4 seconds. I've seen like tracing different objects. Always very simple. Like, don't go out and like buy a tiger and like trace a tiger cartoon. But
it could be anything, really.
Yeah, but it could be anything, like very simple abstract shapes, stuff like that. So yeah, I think it's kind of fun once you get used to it and you kind of find the different ways you can do it out there.
Especially because it's such a silent, easy thing to do in the moment.
Yes.
If you're having one of those silent stress spirals.
And you're not harming anyone. You're not disrupting the environment because, again, like Sophia said, it's silent.
Mm-hmm.
So I really like that one. The next one we have on here is changing your environment. I'm also a huge fan of this.
Absolutely. So this can be stepping outside, moving to a different room, or even just passing through a doorway, as the physical change can help reset your mind.
And that's also very much like when they tell you, like, on a test, like, if you don't know a problem or if you're feeling stressed out, skip it and come back. Because often if you forget it, your memory will come back somewhere through the test. Now, this is, of course, it's not going to remedy if you don't actually know what the test stuff is or you didn't really study. But if you feel yourself in the moment freaking out and you have, somewhat substantially prepared for the test, it can help you. Absolutely. Because, you don't want to freak out because your mind just isn't really focused on the test. It's more focused on calming you down and all the things running up in your mind. So definitely changing your environment can help, and that could just be moving to a different part of the test because, obviously you can't get up and leave.
Flipping a page.
Mm-hmm. If you have time, go to the bathroom.
Yes, if you have time, go to the bathroom.
But I don't think if you're in high school, whoever has the time to get up and go to the bathroom.
During tests.
Yeah. But, okay, next one. Go for it.
Okay. So you can use a sensory shock. This can be splashing cold water on your face, holding a cold pack to your neck, or going out in cool weather can trigger a physical calming response by lowering your heart rate. And especially around this time of year, when it's end of fall, beginning of winter, the ability to change your environment and give yourself a sensory shock by quickly going outside for a breath.
Yes.
You can do all three in one by going outside, taking a deep breath, taking in that cold air, and then bring yourself back to what you needed to do.
Yeah. Although I would say today was not feeling very end of fall winter.
It was very warm.
It was quite warm.
But by the time this is released, it will be cold.
Yeah. But moving on. Engaging your mind elsewhere. So do a puzzle, listen to music, color, or play a video game in moderation to shift your focus from negative thoughts.
I feel like if you are already someone that plays a lot of video games, this might not help as much.
No.
I have a video game on my Switch where it's just colors, and it's just a small little puzzle, and you just have to match the colors so that the background becomes filled. It's very weird. It's called Color Zen, and I love it so much.
Ooh. I like a lot of color things. Yeah, try to find something that matches what calms you.
Mm-hmm.
Like coloring and colors in general calm me, music calms me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a bunch of those things are very centering. You can find a lot of games out there that are kind of centered around because there's a lot of random games out there.
You use that ball one.
Ball sort.
That one.
Guys, I'm cracked at ball sort. I'm on I think I'm literally on level freaking 2000 something. It's really It's really, really bad. It's actually really funny. I kind of want to see what level I'm on, but it's definitely it's definitely bad. But that's not something I would always do for myself because I can kind of get lost in that.
Mm-hmm.
So that might not be smart.
Done it so often.
Yeah, because I do it all the time. That's a little dangerous. Maybe not.
It becomes less of a mindfulness tactic. Getting of a stress out if you are doing it all the time. Especially
if if you find yourself on this game a lot,
mm-hmm.
and then they get upgrades or whatever, then you're like, oh no. Then you get involved and you get lost. So like I think Sophia's like color one is a really good one whoa. That sounds like
we just found out that Sophia is on level 2,666.
Yeah.
Which is
I think
insane. That's what I think.
Oh, yeah. I remember actually freshman year we thought it would like end in like level 1000 and then I texted her and I'm like, I'm on level 1001. And I was like, and she's like, you need to stop.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's not a good game for me to
something novel
relax.
Is much better for yourself to take yourself out of that spiral. Usually spirals are about something that has happened over and over again.
Yeah. So, but engaging your mind elsewhere can really help because you do want to remove your mind from that. Like I would say walk away for like 2 to 5 minutes, depending on like how locked in you were on that, because you really kind of want to like refocus your mind again and kind of try to come back with like a fresh mind.
Absolutely. And this being probably not being on your phone and scrolling would be a good idea.
Definitely. But I think, from time to time it's okay. And I think we talked about that before in our second episode ever. We talked a little bit about that in terms of like our guilty pleasures.
Yeah, well.
But moving into long-term management, challenge negative thoughts. So ask yourself if your thoughts are absolutely true and what evidence supports them. Reframe negative thinking into a more balanced perspective.
I feel like someone who's very like brain-focused, mind over heart, and more logical can really use this tactic. I feel like as someone who feels a lot more than she thinks, this is a little tough for me to do because I feel like I wouldn't want to really go through the process of like finding evidence.
So how do you know that you feel more than you like think? Because I feel like for me, it's very much combined, and I don't know, like I feel like some people struggle to realize whether or not they put what their brain thinks over what their like heart thinks. Like it described to me like what you mean by like you feel more rather than you like think more. To the best of your ability.
I feel like, this is playing into a lot of me feeling more than I think more. I feel like I can't put a lot of my emotions into words. I feel like everything is just emotionally overwhelming and my thoughts are just shooting off one after another without really holding themselves back. And I feel like being able to pause and stop to think isn't really something that's easy for me to do. I feel like giving myself a distraction is easier and then being able to think about it. But I really do have to focus to bring myself back to the mental state that I would want to be in.
So is it more like a centralized feeling than it is like a centralized thought?
Yes.
Okay, yeah. Because I think I have so it's more like you're challenging negative feelings rather than negative thoughts.
Yes.
Yeah. So I think I agree because I think I have more of I need to challenge negative thoughts, especially because I feel like I play devil's advocate in my head all day long. And so I have the piece of me saying, oh, you're right. Like for example, like if you were to say like, oh, I know I should be studying right now. But then there's the other part like, oh, I know I want to do this. But it's like, I know logically, like if I'm talking down on myself or I'm feeling down on myself, like logically I'm like, no, you didn't do anything wrong, or you're doing fine, or you're right where you're supposed to be. But then there's that other half of my brain that's constantly counteracting that. So it's like, it's really discombobulating for me because it's not like I don't hear that positive side at all. It's like I have that side. It's just not strong enough against it. So this is where, again, practicing that, challenging your negative thoughts to reframe your thinking into a more balanced perspective is really important.
Especially when it comes to the evidence part. I feel like a lot of logical people can like think about the fact that like, where is this coming from?
Right. And they're very in touch with their thought process.
Absolutely. I feel like moving on to the next two things, while these can also be for these logical thinkers, I feel like they also play a lot into people who feel more than they think.
Yeah. I'm kind of liking this third one I'm reading here that Sophia put here because she wrote this episode.
I did.
Props to you.
Thank you.
But
the next one we have here is to practice regular self-care by prioritizing activities that bring joy and relaxation. This can be hobbies, exercise, and a healthy diet. And I want to add also like a skincare routine can play into this part.
Just anything that makes you feel good about yourself. but not in the way that it needs to be like expensive, splurging things, like ways that you like, if you do your skincare and like your face like feels good because it feels clean and it feels like you put effort. Anyway, moving into build a calm kit.
This is the one that you just said you really like.
Yeah, I really like this one. I should do it.
I agree. I want to do it.
It's like, it sounds cute. Just the name, like calm kit.
Calm kit.
Anyway.
So a calm kit is a collection of soothing items such as photos, essential oils, or a journal within easy reach to help manage anxiety when it strikes. So I feel like a lot of these things are distractors and can help you pull your mind away for a second just to regain your,
Yeah, like your composure.
Yes, that.
Okay. I kind of like this one because I feel like it's easier for people to kind of think of things that they could put in here because I think everybody knows kind of things that they appreciate or things that help them decompress in their daily lives. Like, Sophia knows, like, I like going out with my friends and doing that. And I think for me, I'd probably put like snippets of conversations that I really enjoyed because for whatever reason, I like to go back and reread conversations or redo things. And now this can bite me in the butt too.
Yeah, because
which I felt like Sophia was just going to comment on.
No, I would never. But I feel like going through your old texts and seeing what you wrote sometimes brings that feeling of like, why did I say that?
Yeah, no, I've definitely gotten the cringe of, ew, what was I doing?
No, literally.
But there are definitely conversations or even like little text blurbs that like if a certain text made you feel really good or like a certain comment or maybe a certain gift, put that in there. Absolutely. Depending on what it is, because obviously if it doesn't fit, then it doesn't fit. But like I like could print out like certain texts that I know made me feel really good.
That's really cute.
And I was like, and like use those as little reminders to myself, like thank you for this or like whatever.
I have a little photo album where I print myself Polaroid photos and put them in the little photo album to flip back and look through the little memories.
Oh, I want to do that.
Yeah. That's what I have right by my bedside table.
Oh, that's really cute.
That's where that came from.
Yeah. I haven't had a lot of Polaroids though in my life. Like more kind of from my like birthday party most recently. But yeah, like photos, essential oils. I think those are all like, I love essential oils. Yes. And I think especially if you're very much like a sensory person, like those are really good. Worry stones I think are really cool.
What are worry stones?
So worry stones are kind of like, they're exactly what they sound like, but they're like really smooth stones that it's kind of like something that you hold in your hand and you kind of rub at it and whatever. And there's usually like a little divot in the center. And it's kind of just something that you like hold to like rub. And I feel like there's another name for these too, like something stones or whatever, calming stones or something. But it's like stuff that you play with and touch that like helps center you. And I like would really like those.
And then finally, talking to someone, sharing your thoughts with a trusted friend, or even seeking professional help from a therapist or counselor can be really helpful to manage stress spirals.
And they can also help identify your triggers, which is really, really important because, sometimes even if we pay attention to our own situations or topics that tend to, make us get a little agitated, sometimes we don't always pick out the right things. Like I could say, orchestra agitates me. But what is it specifically about it? Like, it's not just orchestra as a whole. It's maybe a certain specific thing. Maybe it's a certain person in orchestra or maybe a certain song. Or so, like, yeah, I'll always use orchestra as an example because there's just so many different, like, aspects of it that I can apply to literally anything.
Absolutely. And then just to wrap it all up, how to recognize the stress spiral.
So you can start off with journaling, which I know we've talked tons and tons and tons about.
We actually have an episode on journaling.
Oh, that's right, we do. Oh my gosh.
One of the ending.
I think it was the last one.
No.
No?
It might have been. You might be right.
I think it was the last one. But journaling is really, 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 really
helpful.
Oh no, it's our third to last one.
Got it.
16.
That's what I say. Living authentically, I thought was our last one.
Yeah, anyway. I'm more centered on the beginning episodes. Anyway, continue.
Writing about your worries can help you identify that cycle of repetitive thoughts, especially if you look back and see what was the most prominent thing you wrote about that was stressing you.
And I think it's just journaling is cool to kind of chronicle where your life has been. Like, this is why I think AR podcast is cool, because even if you look back on the beginning, you can see the topics that were important to us to talk about or like to process. just by looking back, and it kind of helped me identify triggers. Like, just by thinking about things me and Sophia had talked about, it would be like, wow, this seems to really bother me.
Especially when you talk about orchestra so often.
Oh my god. Well, I already know orchestra irritates me. But there's also physical signs, so pay attention to how your body reacts. Common physical signs include a tight chest, stomach tension, or headaches. Again, orchestra. I always get a headache when I walk into orchestra. Yes. Always get a headache. It's insane. Anyway.
The last one is overly negative thinking, where a constant stream of what-if scenarios or catastrophizing, which is expecting the worst, can signal a spiral to be beginning.
To begin. It can signal a spiral beginning, yes, for sure. And I think these are all things that, like, it's hard for people to tune into, and you definitely won't pick it up, like, immediately. Right. But the minute you start trying to tune into it and start trying to tune into yourself and prioritizing yourself, I think is the minute that you start to show growth in any area of your life.
Oh, I wholeheartedly agree with that.
Yeah. So basically, I think to kind of wrap it up, top it off, there's a whole bunch of ways that you can kind of recognize a stress spiral: journaling, physical signs, negative thinking. To deal with it, there are immediate coping mechanisms like deep breathing and changing your environment, or cold water facial, like we said. And then some long-term solutions would be mindfulness practices, challenging your negative thoughts, and just engaging in outside activities that bring you joy and require you to be focused elsewhere.
Okay, so that wraps up Chamomile Corner.
Welcome to our very first Brutal Honesty.
So Brutal Honesty is where we'll go through our personal stories and anecdotes to supplement what we've already talked about.
We'll also discuss deeper topics within the episode.
For today, we will be discussing our own personal stress spirals and our own symptoms regarding them.
Yes.
So do you want to start? I feel like you've talked a lot about orchestra this entire episode. Let me turn towards you a little bit.
Oh my gosh. That's actually really funny because, well, if you want to look at our script, Sophia wrote orchestra on here 4 times because I was just like, I think everything I do is like centered around orchestra.
I was trying to write down different things that we were talking about during the episode that we might want to like expand on, and I feel like orchestra has been maybe a little bit of a prominent topic this entire episode.
For the entire podcast. No, I think it is because this has been like such a shifting point for me. Like, it catalyzed a lot of things in terms of stress spirals, and then also pushed it in like so many other aspects of my life. And I think it was like, oh, I see you have SAT down. That's a good one too.
Focus on district.
Sorry.
And orchestra.
Yes. I think the very first stress spiral, no, I don't want to say stress spiral because it wasn't too spirally per se, but I feel like in middle school is when I started noticing that orchestra no longer caused me joy, it caused me stress.
Is when you first started to realize that it wasn't what you thought it would be.
Yes. And it was just like the pressure and the surrounding like musicians, like my peers around me, and then my own internal like expectations of myself is when orchestra started losing its like wow, I don't want to say wow factor. It's like fun, like novelty. I'm enjoying this. Not novelty. It's just the funness. Like I started losing the joy for it then. Like in elementary school I loved it, and in middle school I started to hate it. And then moving into high school and just like the pressure of like what Sophia said, like we have districts on here. And districts is like, you know, where it's like the best of the area. And then, you know, you have the best of the region and the best of the state, and then like all East, which is like everybody's like, oh wow, all East. So, and just pushing myself to do it the first time felt good, like freshman year, because it was hard, but like I experienced just with my own teacher, like I didn't have a teacher when I first started playing the violin. I didn't have a teacher for several years, and you know, it's important to get a teacher when you're in your most formative years, and I didn't have one, and that was later on detrimental to my playing, because then in middle school when music got harder and it wasn't just like I could rely on my basic piano skills and my basic like being able to read notes and then my just natural ability to kind of pick up the bow and know where to place it and all that. Now it required more technical effort than what I could just naturally do.
Mm-hmm.
And it required a teacher. And in 6th grade, I got a teacher. But again, like 6th grade was still height of COVID. Like
Absolutely.
I didn't have in-person lessons. My teacher was all online, and it was not the best teacher. I didn't learn much from her. And then I still had her kind of into 7th grade. And 7th grade is when we went back. And it was like my growth during COVID could have either increased exponentially if I had a good teacher or had a teacher, period. But it didn't. It stayed stagnant and maybe even went down a little because I never practiced because there was nothing to practice. And then 7th grade, you had to kind of recover because, you know, our district and the way we operate is, you know, we play at a very high level.
Mm-hmm.
So that was hard. And at first I was like, you know, one of the best there. And then this one kid who I'm actually now friends with came along and I was like, oh my God, like he's actually really good. And he was really good. And he is really good, and he deserved to be first year and all that. But, you know, back then, like, there was a lot of stress on me and, like, just seeing that I was no longer the best and then not being able to play in certain things and then not making honors orchestra and being, like, realizing, like, I need a teacher. And then switching it to a different teacher, 8th grade, who I still have now and I love and adore, and she's very good. And it's definitely helped me grow tremendously. But I was grappling still with the fact that because I hadn't gotten lessons like where I would have been, and that caused a lot of stress spirals for me. And then just like, again, moving into districts, and like last year I just didn't want to do it and I gave up on the motivation. And that's what I was saying like earlier in terms of like reforming your thought process in your mind, is like I had originally not made it and I was kind of like really down on myself. And so I was kind of like in my sophomore year, like, why even try the entire time? And then I tried anyway, and I didn't make it again. And this year, I'm not trying out for, not because I'm like allowing my negative thoughts to take over, but it's all just for my own personal, like, I don't want to do it. It's not as important to me anymore. My priorities have shifted, all that. But it did, like, definitely in the beginning, before I made that decision, affect me, and those negative thoughts and those spiraling of like, I'm not good enough, definitely took over. And I was like, ugh, I can't do it. And that just happens viewing in the orchestras anyway, like in general. So that's kind of my experience. But like a lot of it like stems from orchestra.
Seems like a very formative event.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't call
extracurricular.
It extracurricular. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I feel like the SAT has also been something that we've been grappling with constantly since the week prior to the November SAT.
Yeah.
We both very recently took the November SAT and very recently got our scores back,
a month
actually.
Ago. Yeah, we got them on Friday.
Mm-hmm. And we both weren't exactly where we wanted to be, I don't think.
I wasn't where I wanted to be at all.
I feel like I was grateful that I'm getting closer to where I want to be. And I feel like I can see myself growing and doing better, doing more practice tests, doing more work, you know?
Yeah.
And ever since we started studying with actually a completely different person who was extremely successful in her first SAT score.
Oh my God, she's cracked.
She's insane. She's incredibly intelligent.
And I know she's watching this.
Oh, for sure. She's, I think, one of our, like,
shout out.
Yeah.
We see you. Anyway, but yes, I think like that was a huge point of stress for us, but it got addicting too.
Yes. I wholeheartedly agree with the fact that once you start, it's hard to stop.
And I don't think that's a universally relatable experience. I think that's just some people.
I feel like it's relatable in the way that once you get comfortable with something, you want to keep doing it. I feel like I hate new math concepts. I hate everything about them. True. But once it comes to the fact that I know what I'm doing and I feel like it's fun to try, it's like a puzzle at that point. Well, if I know all the concepts and I know I can do everything, it makes it a lot easier for me to keep going.
Yeah, I can see that. Because I was saying, like, I kind of want to just take another practice test. Like, after the SAT, like, literally the first thing I said to Sophia was, like, I want to take another practice test.
And you didn't end up doing it.
No.
God, because that's insane.
No, because I didn't have the time. Like, I had something else to do that day. But B, it was just, that's insane. But we got so wrapped up in that and wrapped up in trying to practice and get our scores. And I think we kind of got way too caught up in it. Like, we put way too much pressure on getting those score stuff.
And I feel like the scores ended up being better than we thought they'd be.
Do you mean in terms of after our practice?
Yes.
Like no,
not after our practice. I thought we would do great after our practice, but I feel like in terms of how we felt after coming out of the test, I feel like we did a lot better than we thought we would.
Yeah, I mean, personally for me, because I felt like a bit of a stress spiral, because like shout out to Natalie, because Natalie, I had her look at my score for me.
Right.
I didn't want to look at it because I was so scared. Because walking out of that test, we both were like, guys, we're gonna get an 800. Like we're gonna get like a 0. Like this was bad.
My goal score was 1370 after coming out of that test, knowing that
that wasn't even my actual score. So good for you. Yeah. But looking at the breakdown made me feel better because like I was like I expected better on English, and I was like whatever. But I was like English was really hard this go around. Like
it was
surprisingly hard, including module 1 was hard, and I was like what the heck. And then math, I just like I've never been strong in, and I just didn't. Sophia's done like tons and tons and tons of Desmos research and all this stuff and practice.
Now, the friend that we're studying with, she's teaching us different ways other than Desmos that help us solve the questions faster.
And I was just like, and I didn't know any of that kind of going into the test. Like I reviewed it maybe like an hour before the test, like the night before when we did a practice test. So it wasn't like strong. And I didn't love it. And now I'm just thinking about how the fact that I need to text my manager to give me off next week because of the SAT, because I haven't done anything. But anyway, regardless of that, yeah, it was just like I like looking at the breakdown made me feel a little bit better, but looking at the combined score was just kind of like disappointing for me because I was like I was expecting to do at least a little bit better than that, but I was like it's okay. So, but it definitely caused like a stress spiral for
sure.
I don't know how bad it was.
And having Natalie being able to go and help you out with that.
Oh my god.
Seeing the score, having someone there when you're looking at the score.
Well, you know? And that's why I did that because I was like, I don't want to just like feel really bad about it with no one there because she's like one of the people that I trust. So I looked at her and she's like loading, and the freaking College Board is being like really ominous about it too. Mm-hmm. And it wouldn't load, and then all of a sudden it loads, and I go, "Am I gonna be mad?" And she's like, "Yeah, you're gonna be mad." And I was like, "Ugh." And I was like, "Fine." And I literally guessed my score. She's like, "Oh, you did better than your PSAT," and I was like, "Yeah, but your PSAT is supposed to like project like a higher SAT, and I was not in that higher range," and I was like really upset. I was just like, what, like 10 points higher? And she goes, yeah. And I was like, wow. What the heck? And I was like, dude. And I was like, so annoyed. Good. It was not a good score because I was mad at my PSAT score too. But it was just like it wasn't, like, I mean, it was, but it wasn't. Like, I always think, like, you always think coming out of something like, oh, I failed. And you didn't actually do that bad. But, like, it kind of was like, no, you did do that bad to me. And I was like, oh, whatever. So like, but I like accepted it. But I definitely during the SAT felt like that kind of like those agitation.
Oh dear. Yeah, I feel like meeting you in between the SAT helped a lot to manage my own stress spiral.
Yeah.
Not to mention we didn't exactly only talk about the SAT too. No. We were talking about other things, which also I felt like helped distract.
It removed your mind. And it was like those subconsciously I think we were using like those strategies that we were talking about earlier about how you need to like refocus your mind, remove yourself from the situation. Yes. Like I definitely needed to get up and leave the room, and to go on a walk, like a 10-minute walk was really nice. And it was like, thank God. And it's nice that they give us breaks. So I was like, thank God I get a break.
At least a 10-minute break in between, like the reading and the modules helped a lot.
Yeah.
And I feel like utilizing the time you have to take that break, to take time away from that stress file is really helpful.
And like not talk about the test, because number one, what are you gonna do?
Yeah,
you can't change your English answers. Absolutely. Like they're locked in. That's what you did.
So talking about it is not going to help you at all. I feel like the most you can do is help review for math when it comes to talking about the test.
But even my mom said like reviewing like the night before, or the day of, or what, it's not gonna really help you. It's not really gonna change your score, and she's right. So I mean, it depends on what it is, but I definitely think those are like huge, like just recently those are huge stress spiral type things.
So basically, we essentially just talked about the SAT, and you talked a lot about orchestra and how we've had stress spirals and dealt with them in the past.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And it kind of like, you can kind of see how it's personally affected us and how we've kind of chosen to manage that and combat those like symptoms that we feel. But I think, again, like, it's important to think about where does that happen in your own life and what can you do to kind of combat that.
Absolutely.
Okay, that wraps up Brutal Honesty.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode.
I hope you'll join us next week on Sip and Spill.